We go. Tim is the top G.I. Joe fan in the whole of America.
Tim è il miglior fan di G.I. Joe in tutta l'America.
Let's talk about this comic.
Okey-dokey. This was fairly straightforward, so let's see how long it takes us.
49 minutes, that's my guess.
Live from the Talking Joe Studios. It's Talking Joe.
Talking Joe is on the air.
Hey, we're the monkeys. It's me, Mark, head of guest relations for the Talking Joe Casino. If you are new to the show, you can find out all of the details over at the website, which is talkingjoe.co.uk. Today, we will be looking at G.I. Joe, A Real American Hero, issue 293, which was released 8th of June 2022. It's the storyline where Alpine hunts vampires in the Transylvanian mountains. That's right, it's high stakes. Joining me, as always, thank you. It's A Real American Tim. It's Tim Finn.
Hello, listeners, and hello, Mark. Mark, if you are head of, what was that, customer relations at Cobra Casino, I would like to be Bat009 head porter, and I will carry your luggage to your room. I guess in this analogy, your luggage is your listening experience with the podcast.
And will you be wearing the costume?
A male version of it, yes. A traditionally male version of it.
Wow. Shall we get into it? Let's go. So we're talking about issue 293, just out this last week as a time of recording, coming from writer Larry Hama, artist SL Gallant, inks Maria Keane, colours Jay Brown, letters Neil Utaki, group editor Tom Waltz, and research specialist Diana Davis. Now, before we get into the inside of the book, let's have a look at those things, what they have on the front of them.
Let's have a look at the covers in the gallery.
Cover A of G.I. Joe 293 is the middle of a 5-part connecting cover drawn by Freddie Williams II and colored by Fariza Kamputra. We finally see Serpentor. In our previous episode, Mark was starting to talk about this because the final page says next month and has this cover on it. And he said, Serpentor. And I said, no, let's save this for the next episode. So Mark and I had been wondering in previous episodes, reading the story, and in the previous arc that had a 5-part connecting Freddie Williams II cover, right? Originally, these 5 covers in solicits appeared to go for that earlier arc.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and then
swapped out for the movie themed.
Yeah, the battle at the Statue of Liberty, and these we wondered what happened to these covers. They got lodged with Joe 291 through 295, and it seems to turn out that's because this story is about maybe bringing back Serpentor, and Serpentor is indeed in the middle of this 5-part cover. So here we are with cover A. 2/3 of the entire image are Cobra Commander's helmeted face with the silver mask, and a sort of small Serpentor walking toward camera away from Cobra Commander, and just 2 Joes, Dawn in her entirety and Flint in his entirety, reacting to this sort of burst of light and Serpentor. And as a cover, I think this does a pretty good job getting someone casually looking on a rack of new comics to pick up this book and maybe buy it. But as with a comment I've made previously about a lot of connecting covers and sometimes wraparound covers, I feel like negative space is decided quite differently. And I think if you were to, on its own, commission a 1-image cover from most artists, Freddie Williams II included, with just these 5 elements, Cobra Commander's face, Serpentor, Dawn, Flint reacting, I think even there you'd get a different composition that would be a little bolder, a little more striking. So I don't dislike this cover, but it does just sit there a little bit. But I do like all the poses, right? Flynn's pose is great. Serpentor looks imposing, and this is probably the first time we've seen Freddie Williams II draw this version of Cobra Commander.
Yeah, probably. Unfortunately, though, no Serpentor on the inside. After building myself up to say that he wouldn't be in, then sort of walking it back last episode. Now, finally, it's here, and we don't have Serpentor making his grand reveal on the interior of this episode.
He is mentioned once or twice, though, and it is in process that Mindbender wants to bring him back. That is in the comic.
And actually, while we're on connecting covers as well, I'll just flag as well. There's some exciting news that Jamie Sullivan's big interconnecting cover of the grand Cobra cast that he'd trailed on social media a few months back has now been solicited as a forthcoming set of covers. So starting with issue 296, I believe, will be the first part of the next set of interconnecting covers with that cool set of cast of thousands of Cobras. Sort of must be in the lead up to issue 300, with probably 300 being the last part of that cover.
And refresh our listeners, Jamie Sullivan previously did several interconnecting covers with every Joe.
Yeah, he had that big Joe cover with, including holding deceased Joes as well, and he had another set.
Not their corpses, framed photos of them. It was all the Joes. Yeah. So all the Joes standing, and a few Joes were holding framed images of deceased Joes.
Yeah, and a cool one of the original 13 Joes as well before that, I believe.
Cover B of issue 293 is drawn by SL Gallant and colored by J. Brown. And this has Cobra Commander on the bottom with his arms spread and his palms up to the sky. He's lit by two braziers or giant torches on either side of him. We are low. The camera is at waist height or below and looking up. And behind Cobra Commander is Destro's silent castle with a big banner on it that says Grand Opening, and then a sign that's illuminated that says Casino. And most of that word Casino is obstructed by Cobra Commander. And then coming above from behind this castle are a great variety of Cobra aircraft. So there's a couple trouble bubbles, a fire bat, a rattler, is that the Hurricane VTOL?
Yeah, I was just looking at that and thinking probably it's the underside of it is like sort of looks to be colored green.
Yeah, Aquajet, gray wings, yellow missiles. The Night Raven, a Fang, and there's a medium blue sky above them, and all the jets are sort of coming out of and blasting with sort of light purple smoke clouds. And it didn't occur to me until right when I sat down to read this comic that this cover has a fun sort of factual error. And that is that this is Destro's castle depicted on the cover and, made famous in issue 21. And, we saw it again in 135 through 138 when it sort of transforming. And this castle is not on Cobra Island, and Cobra Commander has not opened a casino on this castle. But maybe in needing to draw a cover ahead of time, someone said to the artist, just draw anything that's an identifiable Cobra building. And I'm fine with that, right? Covers can be exaggerations. Covers should be exaggerations of the interior. If a character is in their civilian clothes or in a disguise, I probably want them in their iconic costume on the cover. And I wouldn't say, wait a minute, they're not wearing their funny mustache on the cover. I want to know who it is on the cover, right? Not to see some Joe wearing a hat and a funny mustache. But also I realized the reason why I like this is that in a previous episode of this show, we sort of realized that though he was solicited to draw a page for the G.I. Joe 40th anniversary special, which is the remake of issue 21, Silent Interlude, Shannon Gallant, in fact, did not draw any pages of the page-by-page remake of issue 21, probably because he's too busy drawing this final run up to 300. And so here on this cover, in a sideways way, Shannon Gallant gets to draw not a page from Silent Interlude, but the castle.
Maybe this started off as page 1 of the Silent Interlude remake, and they were running out of time. Like, no, make it a cover instead. But from story purposes as well, I think it was back when Mindbender was visiting the geodesic dome in New Orleans that they talked about there potentially being a franchise of Cobra casinos all over the world. That was going to be part of the grand scheme. So maybe this is kind of looking ahead to that.
A story that we won't get, because that would be like issue 306.
Well, you never know. Sometimes things move fast, sometimes they move slow.
That's true. There is a small detail I want to point out that I really like in this cover, which is that...
Have you been looking at the brassieres?
That's not how Americans say that word,
okay.
but thank you for the joke. I say that because I made that mistake as a college student, and I slightly shocked a family member when I was describing one item, and that family member thought I was describing the other. Reflected in Cobra Commander's faceplate on this cover are his outstretched arms.
Yeah.
In silhouette, which is just a very nice, smart, drawn detail. This cover is a little unusual in that it focuses equally on characters and vehicles. I'm always kind of fascinated with the G.I. Joe covers that are only or primarily about vehicles in a way that, like, I don't mean 47 with Hawk and Beachhead and Wetsuit on the Devilfish. I mean, what is it? 128? What's the Wildman cover with the battle wagon? Where the cover is very much about the battle wagon, and then the Joes almost look like action figures on a vehicle. Or 60 something. What's the Ron Wagner cover with the Rolling Thunder and the Stealth?
Yeah. Is that that's the one where the Rolling Thunder's coming right towards us.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
And here's a cover that is 1/3 about, character, Cobra Commander, person, 1/3 about vehicles, and 1/3 about sort of background and negative space. There's a lot of sky here, which is probably good because, IDW tends to put stuff behind the logo and tends to not let stuff go in front of the logo. And here, just a tiny bit, 2 of those planes do go just a tiny bit over the logo. Anyway, so fun cover. This is definitely a cover that to me represents the image, and I, at my comic book store, happily put 293 cover B in front of 293 cover A, because I think it sells the comic much better.
It also actually, just as you were describing it, I was sort of looking at it, it sort of also is a kind of counterpoint to the Serpentor Uncoiled reprint special, which SL Gallant did the cover for.
Yeah. So
Cobra Commander with his outstretched arms and big Kelly Jones-esque sort of flowing cloak is actually not a million miles away from Serpentor on the front cover there. Although, compositionally, Serpentor is much more dominant in the Serpentor cover, whereas Cobra Commander is down in the bottom.
I think this is a coincidence. I think Gallant on that Serpentor reprint is referring to Serpentor's speech at the end of issue 49. And I'm gonna go out on a limb here and say, coincidentally, not referring to Serpentor's speech in at the Lincoln Memorial in Washington, D.C. in the Arise, Serpentor Arise animated miniseries. But note in the Serpentor Uncoiled cover, there are 2 columns on the top left and right with these upstretched fists. And a bunch of Vipers do pump their fists in that animated episode when Serpentor gives a speech about the 1,000-year rule of Cobra. I think these covers are similar coincidentally. I think, if you put 100 if you put 100 monkeys in a room with 100 typewriters, sooner or later 2 of them are going to draw G.I. Joe covers that are more similar than dissimilar.
Yeah. Very good.
Because also think about it logically, right? If you're going to show Cobra Commander or the Cobra Casino in a bunch of planes, if you have the camera high up looking down, maybe Cobra Commander's not going to read, or maybe you're going to sort of not be able to maximize the elements. Cover RI, retailer incentive. Comic book stores could order 1 copy of this for every 10 copies combined of covers A and B. Is drawn by Nitho Diaz and colored by Vinicius Townsend. And it is a straight-on, cool, action, ready-to-attack shot of all 3 Snake Eyeses. There's original Snake Eyes in the back holding 2 swords with his Uzi sort of on a sort of wrapped around his shoulder, swinging. There's Throwdown with 1 sword and 1 Uzi. And then there's Dawn Moreno, who is currently Snake Eyes, with 1 sword and what might not be an Uzi, but what might be a MAC-10.
Yeah.
On a what's that word? Piece of fabric for hanging strap on a strap hanging over her shoulders. And there's no background, but the background's divided into sort of 3 dominant blocks, and you can't quite tell because the logo and original Snake Eyes' placement, but the red rectangles behind him either are or remind you of the Arashikage logo tattoo. Cool cover. This is certainly a sexier cover to sell, but stores probably wouldn't be selling this at cover price off the new rack next to A and B because it's rare and therefore quote valuable.
Yeah.
What happens on the insides?
So,
you know what? Let me add one more thing. Cover RI is meaningful for 2 reasons. One, it's the second to last Nitho Diaz G.I. Joe contribution that we know we have coming before the series ends. He's doing some work for Marvel right now. I don't know if that's a one-off or the beginning of something bigger. He does have a Serpentor hardcover reprint. He's drawn a new image for that, and that's coming soon from IDW, which is going to reprint issues 49 and 50 and Yearbook 2 and some other stuff. So, this guy who contributed something significant to the IDW run, it's exciting to see him sort of check back in one more time when seemingly he's not going to be available. And 2, this image it's not a memory and it's not a fantasy, but it is a moment that can't exist because, of course, original Snake Eyes is dead. So
or can it?
Well, right.
Dun, dun, dun.
In terms of sort of, fan wishes and hopes and a little bit of fantasy and fun, hey, it's that character we all love who's gone, and the 2 characters who have tried to replace him all together. And yet the original Snake Eyes, because he's behind them and he's not emerging from smoke, but I think to separate his legs from Throwdown's arm, I think the black ink of original Snake Eyes' legs have been knocked back with a lot of weight to sort of push him further back. It does feel a little bit like maybe he's not physically there, he's sort of mentally there. But either way, it's the team up that we maybe didn't know we always wanted.
Or maybe I don't know. Maybe I'm reading into this. Maybe he's not on their team. Maybe that's a malevolent Snake Eyes.
Huh.
It's as you say, sort of somewhat separated from the 2 in the front and sort of coming up behind.
Like a surprise. I'm going to go out on a limb and say that Diaz's art direction for this is a guess, did not include that detail. And that someone said, why don't you draw all 3 Snake Eyes? That's awesome. Or he said, can I draw all 3 Snake Eyes? That's awesome. And someone said, yes.
Probably.
But yes, if it turns out story-wise that this is what happens in a couple issues, Snake Eyes is back from the dead because of Mindbender, he's evil, or goodness, there are many clones of him, then this cover may look prescient. What happens on the inside?
On Cobra Island, guests are being welcomed for the grand opening of the Cobra Casino Resort. Crimson Guard Laura is in charge of the screening process, but doesn't spot Jinx, Helix, Dawn, and Scarlet, disguised as old biddies in fat suits, nor Sean, who is in mufti as a burns victim. The Joe team are feeding intel back to Duke, Stalker, Mainframe back at the pit, and also to Rock and Roll, Gung Ho, and Roadblock, who are camped out in the Cobra Island tree line. However, the Revanche Casino bots scan the cases of the Joes and identify that they are full of weapons. Meanwhile, Dr. Mindbender monologues about his lab projects to create a new Supreme Military Commander and use his brainwave scanners to clone Snake Eyes. When Cobra Commander comes snooping into the lab, Mindbender distracts him by reminding him of the underlying strategy for the casino project, something they call sleeping laundry. Scarlet and Snake Eyes snoop about on the roof of the casino and spot a suspicious amount of refrigeration units, perhaps to cool some mainframes. Elsewhere, Jinx snoops about in Mindbender's lab and overhears his plan to clone a Cobra Snake Eyes. She asks Dawn and Helix for distraction. As Dawn and Helix go about creating that distraction, they come across a casino worker who transforms into combat mode. Time for Dawn and Helix to do battle against a deadly casino bot. Again, to be continued.
What are your overall impressions of this issue?
Good question, Tim. I'm enjoying this series overall in this the high stakes arc. I like where it's going, and I like the fact that I'm always going to be surprised by whatever it is that Larry comes up with. In terms of this specific issue, I liked what we got, but I was somewhat disappointed by a feeling of deja vu. I'll expand that I think I had sort of three main cases of deja vu. Shall I outline those?
Yes.
Okay, so first one was Mindbender is back again explaining his scheme to Laura and giving a tiny little piece of nuggets, expanding on what we've heard before. So he's already spoken to Laura about his scheme in issue 287, 291, 292, and now we're back for the fourth time in 293. We're also seeing Helix and Dawn up against the casino bot again, which we saw back in 289. I'll give the benefit of the doubt for that one this time, just in case that some of the breadcrumbs that they introduced there about Helix's mother's fighting style and that kind of stuff might get some follow up. The third one is that the Joes are back again, discovering the lab behind the kitchen, like it's as a big surprise, like it's the first time they're finding out about it. When back in 287, again, the Joes had a recon team where they went into the lab and found out about the lab and plugged in to steal some data and stuff. So you would have expected there to as part of the intel briefing process that we would find out, the Joes would know exactly what was going on in that lab. So yeah, that's the case of deja vu and possible confusion.
Yeah, that first one that you mentioned really stuck out at me, in that there are two whole pages of this issue, pages 10 and 16, which were a repeat of Mindbender in the lab explaining the technology to Laura. And I think this time it happens for Jinx's benefit to hear, because on page 16 she's hiding, and then that final panel she says something which is going to move the story forward. I just overheard some bombshell stuff, but I need a distraction to facilitate extraction. So it's one thing for the readers, in sort of third-person omniscient territory, to hear Mindbender explain something to Cobra Commander and Laura in the lab. But the Joes don't know it unless the Joes know it. So logically, some of that was important, but it was a lot of real estate.
Yeah, and the first two pages are before Jinx is in the lab as well, so she's not overhearing that bit. Yes.
So, and it was only one issue ago, right, that Mindbender was explaining
the Genghis Khan thing, and
and the different tanks.
Well, I think we get this issue as a kind of a little bit of the extra building on what's come before, and yeah, as I say, sort of, expanding on this sequence and finding out a little bit of extra information each time. I think it's a little bit clearer this time around that Mindbender is trying to create a supreme military commander to replace Cobra Commander. So what does he say? This time I will produce the supreme military commander who can make up for strategic weaknesses of our used car salesman termed pyramid scheme promoter. So, so there's obviously a little bit of Machiavellian replacing Cobra Commander. He's an old dog who's repeating his old tricks because he was on Team Serpentor back in the day against Cobra Commander to some degree, wasn't he? And as Cobra Commander comes into the lab, he sort of quickly tries to change topic onto something else. So doesn't want Cobra Commander to know, I guess, the full extent of his schemes.
Yeah, I liked that the dialogue you just quoted, where Mindbender trashes Cobra Commander as a used car salesman turned pyramid scheme promoter, because in the previous page, and back on page 2, 3, 4, Cobra Commander, a global terrorist, is both greeting a busload of arriving tourists via a bullhorn, welcoming them to his casino, and also encouraging them to enjoy the delicious food while gambling at his casino. And so this makes me think, one of the times that I spoke with Kirk Bazigian, he said to me that he was never fully on board with the Marvel Comics take on Cobra. And that, certainly I think this was true for the cartoon because the character is a little silly. But in the comic, we can say Cobra Commander is a homegrown terrorist, but there is as much of this sort of pyramid scheme stuff, which I think is funny and cynical, but it's not immediately deadly and delicious the way that like Megatron is in Transformers stories, or maybe some James Bond villains are. And Larry Hama's Cobra Commander is, he's got an ego and he doesn't always take the initiative, and he surrounds himself with mediocrity, it's like there are other people in Cobra, and yet for like the last 100 issues, like who is Cobra Commander most likely to talk to? Dr. Mindbender. It's like there are all those other interesting Cobra agents. There's Firefly and Scrap Iron and Xandar and Gristle. Gristle's never even appeared. And so anyway, this Cobra Commander in these two scenes, I think it's funny, and I think a terrorist, a global terrorist who was a used car salesman and did try to brainwash an entire American town in issue 99. Was it 99? 100, 101? I forget.
Mm-hmm.
I do think this is in keeping. I think this is consistent with his character, but it's a little, I don't want to say silly, but it doesn't feel like high stakes considering the title. And I would like more menace. I do think you can have villains who, like there are real life military people and despots and politicians who win over the population after doing terrible things to a minority of the population by like promising, bread and circuses to the rest of the population. And they like say outlandish things, at televised speeches, and they kiss babies, and they like attend cultural events and sort of make everyone forget, like the ethnic genocide they just committed over there, that kind of thing. But I had a flash while reading these two scenes of Cobra Commander welcoming people of the Cobra Commander of the Deke episodes of the animated G.I. Joe, who's silly and the stakes are not very high. So I think this guy can be deliciously evil, and he can have more than one face and more than one plan going on at the same time. And I'm really interested to know what cerebral laundry is. I have a guess because it involves brainwave scanners. And Co-Commander says, yes, the casino itself is going to make a tidy profit even without manipulating the odds. But sleeping laundry is the icing on the cake. Cool, like awesome. And yes, I think there are gullible people who would take a boat and a bus to a casino in the Gulf of Mexico and like not realize that it is a global terrorist who's wearing a mask, who's welcoming them. At the same time, he's got a bullhorn, you know, like he's talking about like steak. It's like, I should have a gun. I mean, he's not a one-note character. So like, I'm actually not interested in the like overly simplified sort of, you know, Mission Impossible James Bond villain who just like kidnaps a cruise ship of tourists and ransoms them from his island, or like forces them to play games at his casino. Like, it is much more interesting if all these smart people come there of their own volition because he's much smarter than them, or they're not smart after all. But the menace does feel far away.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, what about the other menace in the book? What about the killer casino bot at the end? How did you feel about her fairly rapid reappearance?
I thought the transformation page, the second to last page of the issue, was fun. Some fun storytelling and sort of an escalation. You know, like armor pops out of her shoulders. There's a sound effect. Armor pops out of her legs.
There's some good sound effects there.
Let's talk about SFX, baby. Let's talk about pew and scream. Let's talk about shooting gun things and the sound effects. We'll see. Let's talk about SFX. Let's talk about SFX.
Yes, great sound effects, right? Kashunt, pathonk, 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 thrip, kashrag. And then there isn't one for the flamethrower coming out of her mouth on the final page. But I got to this page and I thought, oh wait, no, I wanted this fight to be the end of the story. But the last couple pages are just cliffhangering to the fight. When did we last see this robot?
That was 289, the Casey Maloney issue. Right,
okay. I'm happy to see her back. I feel like if there had been 2 fewer pages of Mindbender talking about his plan, then maybe this whole fight between Dawn and Helix and this robot could have started and finished rather than been set up. How did you feel about her return appearance?
I didn't object too much. It just, there seemed to be a bit missing beats, which was a recognition from Dawn and Helix that they've encountered one of these casino bots before. Yeah, which just sort of felt a little bit off. It's like if you fought one not too long ago, can you just go, oh man, again? You know, something like that. Right, because the dialogue is initiating combat mode, transfiguration protocol. I don't like the sound of that. Nope. When maybe the note is, the beat is like, oh, not again, or yeah. Like, oh, haven't we done this before? Something that did occur to me with this final scene is we're gonna have a fight with 2 Joes not in their costumes, and as I said earlier, I don't know why these 2 characters. In disguise, sneaking around sunglasses
the casino.
And floppy hats.
Yeah, they wouldn't have time to like drop their civvies and put on their costumes. If this were an episode of the show, or Justice League: The Road to Dark Crisis, that one shot from last month, the character would just tear their entire disguise off, Batman, and like have their actual costume under it.
Right. Or the G.I. Joe cartoon, Snake Eyes would go about pretending that he was in disguise just by putting on a Cobra helmet or something, wasn't he?
Yeah, I think once or twice Zartan is wearing a costume and he pulls the mask off with a flourish and then very easily, I might be inventing this, tears off sort of the whole clothing set that he's wearing and he's got his costume under it. Anyway, but it occurred to me that this fight is going to be 3 women wearing skirts and they're all ninja. and I don't say this to make a joke about like a reader having a dirty mind. I think about this from a practical standpoint, having read a bunch of Supergirl comics 10 years ago, where DC gives her this like silly skirt that's way too short. And so like artists have to sort of contort themselves so that the camera isn't like looking up her skirt. But like this is Supergirl is a character who flies. And so very often people in the scene or the reader might be in a place where they could see up her skirt, which is why that costume doesn't work. I saw this scene and I thought, well, here's this sexy female robot that's wearing a skirt, and here are these 2 Joes in disguise wearing skirts, and there's about to be a whole bunch of jumping and kicking.
Fact correcting Mark will come in here and actually say that Helix is wearing old lady baggy shorts, grey shorts, and Dawn looks like she's wearing like sort of cycling shorts, like black type shorts.
All right. Right you are, yes. If you flip back 2 pages earlier, you can see them running down the hallway.
Tim's dirty mind filling in the blanks.
Yeah. I'm going to distract you with a really nice sound effect. 4 pages from the end when they push through a door that says staff only, and the sound effect says thump.
Thanks, Tim. I'm distracted now.
Here's something that I really liked in the issue. This little bit of logical writing where Scarlet and Throwdown are looking at this lower rooftop on the casino. They've rappelled down from a higher window, and they see something like 2 acres of industrial HVAC units. And she says, the hotel has its own units. This array is way too much for just the casino. What needs this much refrigeration? And then we cut back to rock and roll on the other end of the comm. And she's not just asking hypothetically, and he says mainframes. And this is one of those things, like there's never going to be an X-Men comic, where the X-Men are raiding Magneto's space station or Arctic headquarters or undersea base, right? And they're like,
who would need this many metal forks? Who could possibly need them? Magneto.
The version would be, you'd run into a room and there'd be 5 unconscious zombified mutants, all with like power collars and someone sucking their powers from them. And you'd say something like, wait, why are there all these prisoners here? The villain must have some other plan in mind. But I really appreciate the logical, this fact, this question, and this answer that, how are the Joes going to find out that something is going on in this Cobra building besides the reasonable guess that something is going on? The air conditioners. That's great. And I say this both as someone who enjoys air conditioning and also someone who has been on a roof with air conditioning compressors. Like I have walked around them, and it's something I have given a little bit of thought to. Very good.
And over in the next scene, after the all of the excitement with the air conditioning units, we're with Jinx in the lab after she's snuck in, and she says, "This is Jinx reporting in. Dr. Mindbender has a huge lab hidden behind the kitchen!" ! He's got brainwave scanners here and some other weird apparatus that's, oops, gotta go. And this is almost an error detected for me, that it just seems that from that line of dialogue that she's just oblivious to there being a lab behind the kitchen when the Joe's last reconnaissance team, that was their main discovery, and you'd expect there to be some sort of post-mission briefing or pre-mission briefing in this case to let them know there, and that couldn't be a specific destination, and maybe just if that dialogue was just ever so slightly tweaked, it's like we're following up on the previous intel that the last team gathered, and I'm now in the lab trying to find out more. Something something along those lines. That would just make more sense rather than me thinking, taking it all on face value, thinking, oh, are the G.I. Joes just an amateur bunch that they don't talk to each other? They're doing this big mission and they've not thought to say, what were the last guys here? What did they find out?
Yeah, I think this issue feels a little underdeveloped and like it needed another pass at the writing or editing stage. Just some small changes. I still think this team infiltrating the island and the casino the way they do is great. Cutting back to Duke and company back at the pit, a little bit more on the labs and Serpentor's schemes, hinting at a bigger scheme, and then checking in with Revanche. I think all that's good, but this issue felt very much to me short, primarily because of those 2 pages that were rehashing what has happened quite previously. And this issue also felt sort of transitional in that there isn't a fight, there's a setup for a fight.
Mm.
And there are issues of G.I. Joe which are transition issues, and there are issues of G.I. Joe which are like the big fight issues, and there are issues of G.I. Joe where there's, a short chase and a short fight. And I'm fine with issues of this series going back and forth from one of these modes to another. It might get boring, actually, if every issue was just a big fight. You'd have to take a breath eventually. But I can't help but feel, with 300 coming so quickly, every page is such valuable real estate right now.
It's an interesting observation as well that this ends on like a cliffhanger to be continued. It's it's trailing the fight that will probably happen next issue. And I'm thinking back, and it's probably not since Snake Hunt that's happened. Most of the issues since then have been fairly self-contained and haven't had that, find out what happens next in the next issue, kind of thing. Do you think I'm right? Or do you think it is? Yeah. I think they've either been like an untold tale, which has been self-contained, or even part 1 or part 2 of High Stakes. It's been an adventure that has, had a kind of conclusion at the end of it, and the next issue kind of picks up, but not directly, not in the middle, not in the middle of action anyway.
Yeah. Yes. And I would respond more to the stakes of this cliffhanger here, with 2 Joes up against a killer robot, if the scale of this fight were noticeably different from the last time we saw this robot.
Mm.
But the scale's about the same, or the same.
Just in different attire.
I did want to tip my hat to a couple of fun details. Well, maybe this is an I Spy, but on page 1, panel 1, the cruise ship has a Cobra motif to it.
Mm-hmm.
There's a giant, it's not one of the smokestacks of the cruise ship, but it's a giant decorative thing the size of one of the smokestacks, and it's shaped like a Cobra. And we've seen a little bit of this in the animated series, like the Cobra airship from the beginning of the 1985 season, or the Cobra airship from the beginning of the animated movie, and a Cobra airship or 2 from just some regular episodes. So I appreciate that.
And in that same panel, you've kind of got those like kind of speaker tower. I'm assuming they're speaker towers with like the purple Cobras at the head of them.
Yeah, or if they're not speaker towers, they're I don't even know what you'd call it. When you're in a parking lot and there's certain like tall poles that have a number or a symbol on them, so you know where you park. And if you're getting off a cruise ship, you might sort of line up in different sections because thousands of people are getting off. It's if your last name's A through C, go to the first Cobra pole, or people who are in first class, please walk past the riffraff who are lining up by these giant Cobra poles. Also at the bottom of page 1, and we see it again on page 3, and then on page 4, Shannon Gallant draws the casino in a way that we haven't quite seen up until now It is fully constructed, and we see it from several angles. And its shape at the bottom of page 3, and also its shape at the bottom of page 1, reminds me a little bit of Mandalay Bay, which is one of the mega hotels in Las Vegas, where from some angles it looks like it's just sort of shaped like a mild V, but it's actually sort of 3-pronged. And I don't know, in the plot for these issues, what hotel Hama might be referring to. It's like, oh, draw it like this, or if artists are just making it up as they go. But I'm very much convinced, both by the configuration and design of the casino, and also I'm just very pleased as a reader on that final panel of page 3 to see this aerial view looking down of the whole casino grounds and all of the woods and forest around it, and the water, and the Cobra cruise ship in the background, right? That's good storytelling.
Hey, Tim, it's funny you should mention the casino design, because actually I asked SL Gallant, the artist, about it, and he sent me a nice reply describing his process for designing the rest of the casino. And I thought it would be more interesting than just me reading out his response to get him to record a response and play that. But he was too busy drawing the issue to do that. So instead, I asked his good friend, Jon Thurmond, to read his response, doing his best impression of SL Gallant, which he kind of did, but he read it doing his best impression of SL Gallant, who is also doing an impression of Larry Hama. So here's what SL Gallant had to say. Jon Thurmond reading quotes from Gallant. Let's see what he says.
I wanted the hotel to feel like a real structure or casino, but I was stuck with the existing front, so I tried to flesh out the structure on the backside. The segmented or beehive back was supposed to play off the cape lines of the Cobra logo, and then I tried indicating pool, tennis courts, etc., because it's supposed to be a resort. Plus, I wanted it to look like it had room for restaurants, theaters, bars, as any Vegas hotel. There was already the pre-existing design for the front in the Mindbender lab.
So there we go. That's what SL Gallant had to say about the casino as it appeared in that panel. Great little panel.
Every issue that Gallant draws, there are many panels like this where people or props or physical spaces are established and reestablished. A couple pages later, when Gung Ho is looking through his binoculars, on the previous page are 5 Joes check into 2 rooms next to each other, and it's very clearly that they're checking into 2 hotel rooms right next to each other. And Scarlett says, "Oh, look, those nice ladies from the jitney have the door right next to ours, have the room right next to ours," right? And then you turn the page, right? So it's shown and told, and then you turn the page, and Gung Ho says, "I see them." And then we, in POV, see what he sees in the binoculars, and 2 separate windows right next to each other. There are 2 Joes waving at us at the recon team. And then one of them in green has taken off her mask. And then 2 panels later, she very quickly has put it back on to tip the robot, the porter. That's just some good.
Yeah. Sort of holding it up at the back of her neck, kind of in.
Yeah. These are all examples of good storytelling. And if it seems like I'm complimenting Gallant for doing his job, there are lots of very flashy artists who draw very exciting pages that look more like covers, who don't track characters across space consistently or like props. And this kind of thing would be beyond them. And so, this is something that I look for in comics, and when I see it, I enjoy it, and I have come to expect it in G.I. Joe, because G.I. Joe comes from an era of comics when every comic had to always do this. Full, clear, visual storytelling.
And Gallant has recently done a few blog posts where he sort of talk about his process and stuff, and it's interesting to see his work, his sort of pencils and some written thoughts about the process. And he talks about the detail of spaces. He said he likes to create the space and there's consistency in it. And he says, "I always try and echo details in my pages. I hate when artists establish something and then it disappears in later panels or even future issues. I like to maintain the design of a room, no matter the time distance between scenes. It's not always easy, especially when you're trying to move the camera around to keep shots fresh. I hate box room designs, and when people are in a hurry, it's easy to default to that. Adam Hughes once told me at the time that he was in the habit of drawing the room and then putting the people in it. I'd still try and do that, but I also have to have people in poses that are more realistic. I hate everyone always posturing. It gets boring. People are lazy, and we lean on stuff a lot. Definitely sort of very naturalistic body language.
There are two small details where, as much as I like Gallant's storytelling, where I wish his drawing had a little more oomph, a little more detail, and I appreciate that he's juggling dozens of characters in this issue with lots of locations, and every scene has multiple characters. It's not just one person giving a speech in an empty room. But on that second page, when we initially see who turns out to be Throwdown, sort of not in disguise, it's a little unclear to me in looking over Laura and the Techno Viper's shoulder onto a screen that this is, whether or not it's Throwdown. I think Hama's letting you guess, and a moment later you're going to figure it out. But here is a character who has tissue damage to their face, and they're wearing a bandage, and the drawing's a little unclear. It's kind of small in the panel, even the blow up on the monitor that says negative. It's a little hard to suss out because, there's sort of this transparency and he's got glasses. And then similarly, a couple pages later, when the Joes are in their hotel room and Scarlet has taken off her mask and she says, "Well, that was certainly a turnaround. Old Scarlet wears the rubber mask and Sean goes natural. Can't wait to shuck off this fat suit." And she's holding a mask. That is such a fun detail that there's this mask, and Gallant draws it from the inside out. So we sort of see the part of it in her hand that would press against her face. And as a prop, that's such a fun, weird, slightly disconcerting object, and it's not super important to the storytelling of that moment, right? Just the fact that they're getting out of costume once they're in the safety, the privacy of their hotel room, right? Like it's great. The panel's great. We see him sitting down. We see he's no longer in the wheelchair, so we establish he doesn't need the wheelchair. She's taking off her mask. There's a great detail. She's taking off her mask at the little table that has the coffee maker, and every hotel room has some kind of coffee maker. But that mask...
That's a coffee maker. I thought it's where you washed your socks. Oh, crumbs.
I wish that there was a little more room in the storytelling. This might be plot and script. This might be sort of camera angles that the artist is choosing to zoom in on that mask. I don't mean like it's a panel all by itself in close-up, but I wish we had a little more real estate to see that mask, because that's a very specific prop, and it happens again 2 pages later when, is it Jinx? Who's in the blue? Is it Dawn? Someone with black hair is looking... sorry, when they're not in costume, Jinx and Dawn look the same to me.
Jinx is in the blue.
Okay, thank you. Jinx is looking at the open suitcase on the bed, and right next to it, behind her, is the mask that she took off. And that's a little bit more of what I want, but I just want a little more of that. Like, okay, this is not a lightsaber in a Star Wars movie, right? And this is not Snake Eyes' Uzi or his sword, or her sword, right, Dawn. This is not the most important prop in the issue, but it is something a little extra and unusual, and I feel like the story can pay a little more attention to it. In a way that, I don't know, like the binoculars that Gung Ho is using. I don't need anything. I don't need a closer up shot of that. I don't need him to explain his binoculars. I don't need him to say he's holding binoculars. But, maybe I'm just used to episodes of G.I. Joe where, Zorana and Zartan like tear off their mask, and it's like, oh my goodness, it's Zorana or Zartan.
Yeah. And you just talked about sort of the enormous amount of work and sort of the, putting lots of details into the making each scene look very natural, and we talk about sort of all of the details in the background and stuff. You know, Gallant's doing a lot of work here, and I reached out to him and I asked him if he wanted to take part in this, and if he had any particular thoughts on this issue, and he said, really,
he said I'm too busy drawing issue 296. Leave me alone.
Exactly.
Jon Thurmond reading quotes from Gallant. Let's see what he says.
Really, all I've been thinking is I need more time as I'm penciling 20 pages in 2 weeks. Speaking of, back to it.
Wow.
So he's working his socks off to get us these issues. So hats off to you, Shannon.
Here's some other things I like in the issue. When Dr. Mindbender announces to Laura, as you can see, there is a direct cable connection from this tube to the brainwave scanners. And he's got his arms, right? Now that Serpentor's done it, now that Cobra Commander's done it on some covers, Dr. Mindbender gets to splay his arms out and show off the thing next to him, behind him. In this word balloon, Neil Uwatake has the first letter and the last letter of brainwave scanners are a little smaller, and the middle letters are a little bigger, or he's actually slightly warping them, as if they're on a rounded surface, like a balloon or a sphere or a ball. So there's this little extra pep to him saying this. There's a little flourish to the actual type of those two words, which I like.
And speaking of flourish, I've just noticed that he's got down on one knee as he's doing it. It's almost like jazz hands. It's like sort of getting in front of them and the brainwave scanners. Da-da.
Yeah. He's very dramatically unveiling this thing, presenting this thing to Laura, and you know, I'd bet a little bit of money that bit of body language is not in Hama's plot, but that Hama might be describing Mindbender is getting more and more excited, and Gallant thinks of this really funny flourish and then draws it. There's a fun new Cobra logo. When I was a kid, my brother and I noted with some interest the 3 or so times when the Cobra logo got added onto on Serpentor's air chariot. The Cobra logo, doesn't it have a little crown on it?
Oh right, yeah.
And is it on the Night Raven that it's got sort of extra like wings? Yeah,
the logo on the Rattler actually, yeah.
And then something later on, I forget who it is. It's a later Viper. It's not the Toxo Viper 2. It's not an underwater Viper, but there's some later Viper from like 1992 or 93 where the Cobra symbol gets a little extra something to add to the meaning. It's like it's cold or it's electrical or something like this. And here, as Cobra Commander barges into the lab, and Mindbender very quickly pivots how he's talking against Cobra Commander to Laura, and instead is now talking for the benefit of Cobra Commander. And Mindbender pushes a button on a remote in this middle panel, and we see the words for the first time, cerebral laundry, which, by the way, I think the next time we need a title for, what did we do it for? Did we do it for that odds and ends episode?
Yeah.
It wasn't Blue Harvest. What was it? Oh, Launch Base.
Launch Base, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so the next time we need a sort of half placeholder, half in joke G.I. Joe title. Fans everywhere, I've got dibs with Mark on cerebral laundry. Anyway, there's a Cobra logo, and it's got two little sort of jagged lightning bolts on either side coming out of it, like a logo you might see on a battery, like a 9-volt battery. And as soon as I saw that, I thought, cool, that's awesome. I don't know what this is, but I like it.
Yeah, we could call it Cerebro Laundry List as well, that if it's just an assortment of news. Anyway, yeah. Interestingly, they call it Cerebral Laundry on the screen, but then they call it Sleeping Laundry in the dialogue. So maybe a little rebranding of the scheme
Yes,
on the fly.
Maybe you just did our error detected for the episode.
I spy with my little eye.
We spotted some cold slither last month, and they're still there back on page 1. There's a sign that says cold slither. Oh no, it's not page 1.
With cold slither, you'll be joining us soon. A band of vipers playing our tune. We're tired of words, we heard it before. We're not gonna play those games no more. Have you found it yet?
Oh, here we go. It's about halfway through. It's the scene with Scarlett and Sean on the rooftop, and it says now through December, cold slither. So they've obviously
they have a residency.
Exactly. Over on page 1 with the cruise liner, I thought you were going to call it out, but the cruise liner has actually got a name as well. It's the Naja Queen cruise liner. Naja being Indian for snake, the Naja being an Indian cobra. Naja. Did you notice we had a bit more zipper-tone effect as well in the inks from good old Maria Keane?
Yeah, these sort of pre-printed, or in the case of a program like Photoshop, pre-made, like solidly uniform diagonal lines. We see them on page 13. It's all the way on the bottom panel at the left. Oh, it's also in the first panel. Helix's shadow on the side of the slot machine.
Yeah, it does. It sort of crops of it here and there throughout the issue. What else do we have? Oh yeah, we had this casino worker who's delivering the luggage, who's sort of dressed a bit like a casino version of a Playboy bunny, but instead of bunny ears and a little cottontail, they've got sort of cobra ears and a little snake tail. And Tim has already told us that that's going to be his cosplay for the next JoeCon that he goes to, so look forward to that.
Jon Thurmond reading quotes from Gallant. Let's see what he says.
Larry said to make the bellhop look like a Playboy bunny outfit, so I tried to give it ears and a tail, only cobra themed.
The cobra motif. We see the yellow golf cart again that Mindbender and Cobra Commander were driving around in their previous issue, but
Jon Thurmond reading quotes from Gallant. Let's see what he says.
The golf cart was a Google search find, but I love 60s design, so of course I tried to pick something I could see Sean Connery's Bond driving around in.
The Cobra motif continues here and there in the casino with a sort of Cobra statue on the side of the staircase going up into the building, where Cobra Commander has a bullhorn. Cobra Commander's podium when he's welcoming everyone on page 2. On page 3, panel 1, all the way to the right, the front of the podium has a cobra on it. But going back to page 2 on the bottom panel, looking down at the surface of the podium where his speech is, it's a red circular cobra logo. And his speech is written out on that piece of paper. You can see a few letters of it. I thought that was a fun joke, and I really appreciate that kind of detail. I think we're used to it in the animated series, because every time there's a Cobra headquarters, there are several Cobras, on it, like on this parapet and on that parapet and on that tower, and then maybe the giant door, in the front that tanks can come out of. And that's a little silly, and we see less of that in the comic book. But a casino is an inherently flamboyant, ostentatious thing, so this is a good place to have a bunch of extra Cobra symbols and little three-dimensional details.
You mentioned the Cobra logo on the golf cart as well, and clearly from this issue, I think SL Gallant is getting a kick from drawing it, but also Mindbender as a character is sort of really luxuriating in sort of just driving around the casino in this crazy cart of his. And I loved the bits where Cobra Commander shouts at him, "Mindbender, get off that cart and help me welcome all of our fine partying guests eager to try their luck at our gaming tables." Clearly getting a little bit annoyed at Mindbender for just rattling around in his oversized cart, doing his own thing.
I had another question for you in terms of character and the lead up to issue 300. So Crimson Guard's person, Laura, has been established in Snake Hunt and after as having some sympathy for Snake Eyes. And in the previous issue, if I'm remembering correctly, she was questioning Mindbender on if this mad scheme of his needed to result in the death of Snake Eyes.
Mm-hmm.
They're gonna, zap him in the scanner and make clones. And it happens again in this issue. And
yes, as Dawn is overhearing them, isn't it?
yeah, on page 16, when Mindbender says, will result in the death of the original Snake Eyes, Laura has this, it's sort of subtle in the panel because she's small, she's in the background, and she's colored with a lot of blues like the background. She almost disappears, but she's leaning her head into her cocked back palm as if she's terribly sad and disappointed by this news. And, I think of How to Draw Comics the Marvel Way, this famous book from the early 80s, still in print, by the way, where you exaggerate poses. You don't just draw James Jonah Jameson sitting on the phone, upset with Peter Parker. You draw him at an angle with his fist in the air and he's yelling into the phone, "Parker, I need those photos of Spider-Man." So this is the kind of dramatic flourish that, I want to see in comics. But I wonder if he's not looking at her. It's not like he's turning around and seeing her divided loyalties. But I wonder how you feel about her behavior and her, do you buy it? That she's this worried about Snake Eyes, that she's this concerned about Mindbender. Do you feel like Hama has sort of telescoped too early that she's a good guy? She's gonna be a good guy. She's not a Cobra anymore.
Yeah, I mean, it's a little bit on the nose, isn't it? You kind of wonder a little bit what Laura's motivations are more broadly. I think maybe she's just a bit lost, and she's found her way into Cobra. That gave her structure and something to believe in, and be a sort of an unquestioning Cobra loyalist. And now she's sort of seen another way, got reason to doubt and question, but has continued on, and probably she's like a little lost lamb following Mindbender around at the moment, not really kind of agreeing with what he wants, but sort of going along with it for now and being a bit sad about it. But yeah, it's sort of telegraphing a little strongly, perhaps, that she's wavering.
Because I feel like, in 5 issues or at 300, there's going to be a scene where Co-Commander is saying, "Laura, you have Snake Eyes, shoot him," or "Laura, that Joe is unconscious, strap them into the brainwave scanner." And Laura's going to say, "No." And then, the soap opera of this version of G.I. Joe has always been the interconnected lives of the characters. Cobra Commander's the drunk driver killed Snake Eyes' family, and, Baroness thought Snake Eyes killed her brother in Vietnam, and etc. It's like as much as I give a hard time to Rise of Cobra for, Cobra Commander and Duke and Baroness having this shared history. Well, the comic did that, but the comic did it over many, many years. But I think the thing with Laura is that I feel like we just saw this with Dawn. We saw a Cobra youth leave Cobra and become a Joe, and it would be cool if Laura left Cobra, and then, let's pretend this version of G.I. Joe goes, another 20, 30, 100 issues. Like, around issue 320, Laura, officially becomes a Joe, and then 5 issues later, she's got a costume and a code name, and then she gets a spotlight issue all to herself as a Joe. That would be cool. I like this soap opera. But, it's not like Dr. Biggles Jones or Dr. Who's in issue 1? Is it Burkhart?
That's Burkhart, isn't it? Issue 1.
Yeah. Some of the sort of thrill of them showing up or returning is that it doesn't happen often. Or I guess with Biggles Jones, she never came back. And the world's a big place, and I feel like if this comic went past issue 300, it's just as likely that Laura leaves Cobra and we just never see her again. She just she moves to Brazil or Alaska or drives a truck or something. Cobra Commander is being really nice in this story, and Laura is really nice in this story. And so what's left is Dr. Mindbender with this sort of evil plan that announces itself as an evil plan. And
with jazz hands.
I might change my tune in a couple issues when it's sort of Millville again, and Sleeping Laundry is actually 1,000 civilians who just got off a cruise ship getting brainwashed. And now Cobra has a bargaining chip, and the Joes can't just, bomb the casino because it's all Cobra soldiers and bats. Or, I like Laura. I feel like it's a similar path that we've seen with Dawn, and I want it to go differently. Or I want her to be more divided. I want her to do one more bad, evil thing and then feel terrible about it. I have one more sort of I Spy, something that we've seen before, but I had completely forgotten. The Revanche logo is on that sign for Revanche Robotics when the Joes have taken out their gear and we cut back to Hackensack, New Jersey. I had forgotten that the Revanche logo is 2 R's, an R and a reverse R, which sort of feels like the Cobra logo because it's on top of what sort of looks like the Arashikage logo. And I can't remember, have we seen this version of the Revanche logo before?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure we've seen this before.
All right, so this isn't a new I Spy. This is a hey Tim, you forgot that thing I Spy.
Yeah.
Okay.
Error detected. Error detected. No prize incoming.
Have you got any errors detected?
I don't.
I've got just the same one that I've done for the last 2 months, which
is the thing repeated on the inside front cover?
It's where people are being thanked for their invaluable assistance, and I think those story points that I pointed to earlier are teetering on the verge of an error detected, but I'll let it slide with some grumbling.
There used to be a pudding that was over-egged. You know the pudding. You know the pudding. At first it was British, but then it was Commonwealth. You know the pudding. You know the pudding. But now there's a new player in town, a comic book writer of some renown. He's using real-world examples and peppering the issues with lots of samples. It's a Larry Hammer colloquialism. He's talking G.I. Joe and all its heroism. Can you guess what it is? Is it something new? Now listen as Larry drops a slice of real life on you.
So I spotted, Laura quoted this. She said, "Sometimes a cigar is just a cigar," which is a quote from Sigmund Freud. So why was Sigmund Freud saying sometimes a cigar is just a cigar? Somewhat strange, coming from the father of psychoanalysis, who seem to take a deeper look at almost everything and read into it. But some things are just simple. They don't need to be overanalyzed. They don't need to be overthought. A cigar can just be a cigar and doesn't need to be a big phallic symbol and have a huge academic thesis written about it. Somewhat ironically, I read about this quote in a long article that overanalyzed it.
Do you have jitney?
Jitney. I didn't write down jitney. What's the context?
We can figure it out quickly from the context. On page 3, the 5 Joes in disguise get into a shuttle bus, and one of them says, "Isn't this nice that they provide a special jitney for the differently disabled?" So it's here's the shuttle bus that has one of those little elevator ramps for wheelchairs in the back. And then 2 pages later, Scarlett again refers to, "Oh, look, those nice ladies from the jitney." A jitney is a small bus that carries passengers over a regular route on a flexible schedule. So,
right. I assumed it was the ramp on the bus, not the bus itself. Okay, interesting. They also then draw attention to whether there's a ramp nearby once they get off the bus.
I actually chalk that up to Hama being aware of a variety of people. And an early example is Dr. Biggles-Jones. I guess Dr. Biggles-Jones's mother kept her maiden name, and when they had that kid, the kid had both last names hyphenated, which is a thing you see in real life, like Malcolm Jamal Warner. Or, all sorts of actors and politicians and people there's this like tendency in comics, it's like, all the guys are going to have names like Mike Steele and Brett Green and, like David Gunn with 2 N's or, whatever. But the world's a big place and America's a big place. So one, I think retired people do go to casinos, right? Like this isn't a stereotype. It's true. So yes, if a cruise ship shows up with this casino, so Hama's actually playing the odds. Hama's just using a realism here. But yeah, to go in disguise, they're wearing these suits that make them look older and less able than they are. And so here's just a small little extra detail that their path from the ship to their rooms are going to need some kind of ramps or elevators. And you don't get that in X-Men comics. Because every couple years, Xavier gets cured and he doesn't need his wheelchair.
His wheelchair flies.
Also, his wheelchair flies.
Quote of the week, 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 quote of the week.
I had a couple of favourite line of dialogues. I've already used up one of them. Do you have a favourite that we've not mentioned yet?
It was the one about air conditioning.
Okay. I had Mindbender getting irritated by Cobra Commander. Placating Cobra Commander is becoming more arduous and stressful than it ever was before. Such a small mind fabricating such grand schemes.
Yeah.
Just nice. Yojoage?
Yo, cola, not grape soda.
It's Joage time.
5.
Tim's quote, 5.
I liked the issue, but there are 2 pages that felt particularly like we'd seen them before. And it's on glossy paper, like always. And the other things that I, don't love about the IDW approach.
Okay.
And the ending. This is one of those issues where 15 years ago, when comics were 22 pages, not 20 pages, this would have continued for another 2 pages. Also, no letters page.
So.
I feel like we're just not going to get this until issue 300, and that's going to be a sign off from the editor, the writer, the artist, maybe the letterer, maybe the colorist. Maybe issue 300 will have guest art by some other people who will get to say something.
So for me, I think I've said everything. I liked it generally. There were a couple of bits that were just slightly off. If the dialogue had just been slightly different, talking about not discovering that lab as for the first time as such a big surprise. No recognition that Dawn and Helix had encountered a robot before. Cover that. Maybe just a bit too much mindbender. Otherwise, enjoyed it and enjoying this arc and this run and looking forward to where it goes to next. So probably 6.5. Could quite easily have been higher with just a small amount different in it, I think.
But you know what happens when there's an issue of G.I. Joe that I don't like as much? I like the next issue more. Because one of two things is going to start the next issue, and I like both. One, a fight. Two, the fight is over, and I feel like I have missed 5 minutes or a day, and the Joes are on to the next thing. Like, Dawn and Helix are like running out of the hotel with their clothes a little messed up from Flame and saying, "Oh, thank goodness we got away from that crazy robot. It's like our cover's blown. It's like we have to tell the other 3 Joes that our cover's blown." And Duke's like, "Oh no, their cover's blown," right? So I would like either of those two things. And so I can't guess that my Yo Joage score for issue 294 will definitely be a 6 or higher, but it's likely.
Very good. So I think that's us done talking about this issue. Next time on Talking Joe, we will be covering the next issue as it comes out. So we've just talked about issue 293. So here we go. 294 will be the next one as High Stakes continues with part 4. And it's due out 29th of June. So as at time of speaking, that's only a couple of weeks away. So,
but that's probably going to slip a week or two because that's been happening with a lot of comics, not just IDW, right?
Yeah. But we've got the team on it. We've got the team on it. They'll do it.
I don't mean to swipe at any people at IDW specifically. Like tons of Marvel comics are many weeks late right now because of talent, paper shortages, pandemic delays.
But they've hit the timings for the last 2 issues. So
okay. Well, good job, team.
So I think I'm pretty sure the last 2 issues have sort of been stuck to the original solicit dates. Or I could be wrong. I could be looking back on the past with some rose tinted glasses. But yeah, we've got issues coming out every 2 or 3 weeks over the next couple of months, so that will be something good to look forward to. And on Talking Joe, we're also continuing to talk about the disavowed era, the Devil's Due years. And just the other day, I spoke with Josh Eggerbean about their new After Action Report Volume 2 book. So if you've not checked out that interview, it's on at all of the normal places. And at some point in the future, we will be talking about the Saturday Morning Adventures too. So if you've not yet sought that out and read through it, that will be coming before too very long. So lots on the Talking Joe horizon. Tim, where can people find you?
Hub Comics is my brick and mortar shop in Somerville, Massachusetts, and realamericanbook.com is my blog.
Woo-woo! And you can find out more about the show in all of the usual places. talkingjoe.co.uk is the website that has links to all of those places. Head on over to the Facebook page. Join that if you haven't already and get involved in some of the discussions. You can follow us on Twitter and Instagram. You can email us. And if you don't yet subscribe to the YouTube channel, then hit that subscribe button and leave a little like and comment. Why not? We're also on Patreon, so big thanks to our backers, Richard, Sam, Jay, Bill, Christopher, and Justin, who are all getting early access to episodes, as well as some exclusive content. For example, they'll have been able to listen to this episode before it dropped on our regular Thursdays. So if you want to get there before everyone else and be one of the cool kids, you know what to do. It's patreon.com/talkingjoe. But all of that aside, I think we are done. But
we're Talking Joe. You'll be listening to us soon. A podcast. Nobody beats Talking Joe, an international podcast.
I think I preferred the first one. We're talking Joe, you'll be listening soon. Down your airwaves.
Head to iTunes, other places too, Spotify and Stitcher. You will stream and learn a lot, some more. We'll work on it.
Yeah. Laters.
49 minutes, just like I said.
G.I. Joe sausage.